by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy. Like when they attack.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
that's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And I'm back. I don't know where George is. He said he'll join. He texted me, but I guess we'll stretch. We'll stretch for a while. But what I wanted to talk about today is something called the meta model. And I was talking to George earlier. Oh, there he is. Hang on a second. There he is. The meta model.
Hey, Peter. I apologize. It started uploading all these things when I turned my computer on, and I just couldn't get a response. So
it's fine and dandy, George. We have a very forgiving audience, you know. And
yeah, it's firing up Zoom here, and Zoom wants to be a part of our world here, but I'm going to turn it off. Okay.
Yeah, I would think that you had a Windows machine if you were dealing with that nonsense. That's not very Mac-like, right?
No, it's not very Mac-like, but it did happen. So anyway, I apologize for being a bit late, but it's great to be here with you as always.
Well, terrific. I was just telling everybody that you and I were having a conversation earlier, and what I really wanted to talk about today was the meta model. And the reason that I was kind of inspired by this is, I'm writing about it in my book, but and I'll explain what the meta model is. But I noticed yesterday, or maybe it was this morning, that Johnny Vedmore was attacking Ryan Dawson, accusing him of being CIA, and that might be true. It might not be true. I mean, Johnny Vedmore might be MI6 and he's attacking CIA, and I don't know what's true, right? Frankly, I don't know what's true. But it started reminding me of the idea that there is this hack that neurolinguistic programmers use that is a part of human language and the way that we process our ideas. And it's called the meta model. And the meta model is this idea that if in order to take our experience of life, everything that we know. So if I asked George right now, George, could you tell me everything that you've done since you woke up this morning? George has got such a great memory that it would take longer for George to explain to me everything that he's did from the time that he woke up this morning until now than it took him to live it. And that's because we have this tremendous ability to kind of gather information and collect it all of the time. And so for me to be able to actually speak to you right now, what I have to do is I have to take all of the experiences that I've had today, I have to contextualize them in a way that organizes them into things called sentences that come out of my mouth as words and go into this microphone, go out of your speakers and go into your ears, and are contextualized in a way that you understand. And in order for me to do that, I have to either delete, distort, or generalize my experience of the world in order to fit that whole giant, huge experience of Peter Duke experiencing the world into the words that are coming out of my mouth. And the reason that this is an interesting hack is because, and it's great because my neighbor, Meryl Starr, if you go to merylstarr.com, you'll know who my neighbor is. She's got her alarm going off right now. And I think it's because she can hear me talking. And so this is deliberately being done in order to kind of gaslight me. Anyway, I digress. In order to take our total experience of language and compress it down into something that we can communicate, then what we need to do is delete, distort, or generalize. People who are hypnotists understand that this is a process that goes on in all language when all people are talking at all times. So what a neurolinguistic programmer will do when they're trying to communicate with you, or when they're trying to suggest something to you, is that they will analyze your language and they will look for a deletion, a distortion, or a generalization in the language coming out of your mouth. Now, since we all delete, distort, and generalize all of the time, then it becomes a simple exercise after a while to be able to discover. This is really driving me crazy. She's got this alarm going off on purpose. It's really making me go. It's really making me lose my focus. I apologize to everyone. So what an NLP programmer will do is they will look for a deletion, a distortion, or a generalization in your language, and then they will formulate a question that causes you to. This is really hard. They will formulate a question that causes you to be able to. George, I'm gonna.
Let me try.
Yeah, let me compose myself because my blood pressure is going up, and
Yeah, I understand you're getting kind of signal reduced.
I am getting signal reduced. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is a classic example where you say, George's mind has windows. George's mind has huge windows. Again, you're trying to draw attention to George's mind, right? You're trying to say that there is no mind. There is no proposal to Elon Musk for 10 billion. There is no proposal to set $1 billion aside for citizen journalism. That's not what's important. The $1 billion for citizen journalism isn't what's important. The proposal to Elon Musk to get 10 billion out of the mountain isn't important. It's whether George's mind has windows. Quite frankly, Elon Musk doesn't care whether my mind has windows. What Elon Musk cares about is there 10 billion in this mountain or isn't there, right? What I care about is there a 10% fee for citizen journalism for an endowment? But you can see here, like you say, you suspend the logical processing, you suspend critical thinking by saying, does George's mind have huge windows? Now, all of a sudden, people are wondering, does the mind have huge windows or doesn't the mind have huge windows? Right? Rather than
George, I was reading this book today, which is The Importance of Language, which I highly recommend, edited by Max Planck, and he talks about metaphors, and I think that maybe your metaphor is a little abstract for people, so let me try to bring it home. But thank you for that, because it is allowing me to be able to kind of ignore the deliberate attempt to disrupt the show that's going on right now. So the idea is that people delete, they distort, they generalize. So what somebody will do is they will listen to you talking and they will try to figure out anything that you're talking about to determine whether or not the most obvious thing that they can latch onto is whether or not you've deleted or distorted or generalized something. This becomes a vector because if you're trying to attack other people online, because a natural part of our speaking is to delete, distort, and generalize, you can always find a deletion, a distortion, or generalization in anything that someone does. Okay, in any language that people use, you can find a deletion, a distortion, and generalization. And the reason that it becomes important is the reason that stupid alarm going off was interrupting me is because it causes you to go into cognitive dissonance. When you go into cognitive dissonance, your brain freezes a little bit. Your ability to communicate stops working. And I'm now getting myself into a trance right now so I can kind of ignore what's going on up there. But the idea is that once you are in that cognitive dissonance states, you become suggestible. So the process is like this. Somebody is talking to you. The person who is trying to program you is listening for a deletion, a distortion, a generalization. They ask you a question that's about something that you deleted or something that you distorted or something that you generalized, because we all delete, we distort, and we generalize. And then once they ask you that question, for a moment, it puts you into a cognitive dissonance state. When that happens, if the person who is if they're an NLP expert, they'll be ready with some kind of a suggestion that they can make. And then the next day that you're at a cocktail party, you'll be repeating the idea that they suggested to you as if it was your own idea. Because what they did is that they used the framework of the meta model in order to be able to get you to move into a cognitive dissonance state. And once you're in the cognitive dissonance state, you become incredibly suggestible. So why did I think this was important? Because I was looking at Johnny Vedmore attacking Ryan Dawson. And again, like I said, I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I've had Johnny Vedmore on the show. I've had Ryan Dawson on the show. I've taken pictures of Ryan Dawson. I think that they both provide good information. I also think that they both do things that I don't necessarily approve of, right? And to that end, you can always find something to criticize Peter Duke about. If you use the deletion, distortion, generalization framework, you can always find something to criticize Peter Duke or George Webb or Mark Kulak or John O'Loughlin or Tucker Carlson or anybody else. Because as a part of natural processing of language, we all delete, distort, and generalize. So we're all susceptible on that vector. Now I'll stop talking, George.
Well, and now with the addition of the comments, to suspend critical thinking, everybody's thinking that I've somehow misrepresented the gold mine to Johnny Vedmore and to Ryan Dawson, telling them that the mine has windows. Guys, if you come up here on the mountain, there ain't no windows in the mine. You're going to swing a rock hammer, and you're going to do it for citizen journalism.
Can you explain that metaphor to me, George? Because I honestly, I don't understand it.
Well, what I'm trying to do is mix the troll dissonance with what the real message is. I put out a proposal to assure that citizen journalism would go forward. $10 billion for Elon, $1 billion for citizen journalism. That's the proposal. The diversion or the deletion in this case is George is asking Elon for money. How am I asking Elon for money? I'm not asking Elon for one dime. I'm not asking anybody out there listening for one dime. That's a big idea, though, to keep citizen journalism with an endowment. But you don't want people to focus on that if you're a troll. You want people to focus on whether the mine has windows or not, right? You want people to focus on if I'm in a hut or if I'm in a house or whatever. You want them to focus on all these extraneous things that have nothing to do with the proposal, right? Because you don't want citizen journalism to have a $1 billion endowment. You see what I'm saying? Is you come up with all these little things that make no sense and are completely irrelevant, but you can put them forward like it's really important. It's not important in the least, right? What's important is citizen journalism has an endowment. That's my example.
Okay, it seems a little non sequitur to me, but I was in this book, the importance of language that I was reading today. There's an essay in there by C.S. Lewis, and C.S. Lewis is talking in this book about how many of the things that we use in language are metaphors that become the metaphors become old. And I think that one of the I'm trying to remember what the Latin expression was that he had for it was soul, but it was wind, breath. I'm trying to remember what it was, but the idea is I could go look it up while you're talking. But the big idea is that we have words that we use that we think communicate our intentions to other people, but depending upon people's understanding of those words, because words are just abstract concepts, that people may or may not understand exactly what you're saying. So when you're starting to talk about windows in a mine. I don't know what that means. I really don't know what it means.
I
Yeah.
never put forward the fact that the mine had windows. I never said that. It was the troll that introduced that idea.
Okay, so why don't you tell us about this troll? Because I have no context at all.
Well, somebody put up the comment, which is, about the hut and the windows.
Oh, I see. Okay, so here we go. I see. George, I was looking at the camera and I wasn't looking at the screen. George's mountain hut has the kind of room reverb found in a house or a trailer. Okay, so what?
Right. I'm just saying that there was other comments that were put up, but I'm just saying that they're not focusing on the proposal, right? They're not focusing on the effort. They're not focusing on the effort for citizen journalism, because they don't want me to be seen as a person who's actually doing something to ensure the future of citizen journalism. They want to make it about something personal about me. What difference does it make, right, where I am photographing this? That is completely immaterial to me telling the message. And here's the only reason, Peter, is I've been involved in a lot of projects like you have. All the schools and all the journalism projects we've done always have been knocked down with trolls. Mainstream media has come after us, and alternative media, people who we thought we were friends and we got started in this business. They've all come after us, right? And always, always, always the knockdown of citizen journalism has been money, right? They always go after the money. They always want to cut off your source of money. So the trolls immediately start bringing in all these extraneous things that have nothing to do with the gold in the mountain, right?
Right. And they aim at your deletions. They aim at your distortions. They aim at your generalizations, because we all delete, distort, and generalize. That's the point that I'm making. We all have a vector. We all have multiple vectors, right? We all have. There's no such thing as absolute truth in language. Okay, there isn't. I mean, maybe if you said water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe that's always true.
I never made the representation that I knew I have the 10 billion ready to wheel out to Elon Musk in a car. Mm-hmm. Right? I made it clear that we're prospecting. We showed the rock hammers, right? After we started doing that, the place we got doubled in value and was purchased by another company. After we did that, Barrick Gold, the largest gold mining company in the world, came in on the other side of the mountain and announced a 500-person mine for 24 years. That's the biggest mining company in the world, came in after we started this effort on this mountain, okay? They don't have the money either yet, but they think it's here. So is that a misrepresentation? I don't think that's a misrepresentation. We knew all along that it was a prospective endeavor. But my point is, where else would the money be going? It's going to be going to electrical vehicle cars, where lithium is $3 a pound, an ounce. Gold is worth 75 times more. It's one car battery is 10,000 iPhone batteries. So Ford just came out and they said they were losing $132,000 a car. They lost $1.3 billion in the first quarter. So should we be mining gold for a future to have a gold-backed alternative to Fed coin and financial enslavement? Or should we be making more electric vehicles? And that's what I'm trying to say to Elon Musk. I'm trying to give him a choice. You're mining. I went to the mine, right? I went to the mine, Peter, and I showed everybody him mining the lithium. And I presented a choice to him saying, why don't you do gold? 75. It's not that far away. It's only 60 miles. So this is what I'm saying is the distortion, right? How can I, get everybody involved in the whole mining project, right? It's impossible. I have to simplify.
Well, yeah, right. So what is? I guess my question would be, what is another thing that's very important in hypnosis is intent, right? When you ask a person a question in order to put them into cognitive dissonance, the suggestion that you're making usually has to have intent. A hypnotist has an action that they're trying to elicit. that they're trying to get you to move into. So I'm going to ask you, if you were trying to hypnotize the audience right now, George, what is the action that you're actually moving them towards? Because I'm totally in cognitive dissonance right now.
Forward my proposal to Elon Musk. You're not involved unless you have $50 million. You're not involved as a potential customer here, right? And I doubt any of our listeners have 50 million to go into the side of this mountain. So just forward the proposal on to Elon. So the whole premise here is somehow this is a con. Right?
Mining lithium in Idaho?
No, mining lithium in Nevada.
In Nevada, okay.
Sparks, Nevada is where the thing, Winnemucca is where the gold mine is. And my point is that I am putting forward a business proposal to the richest man in the world, right, to mine something 75 times more valuable. He's already doing the mining. He's already moving tons and tons and tons of lithium. So he's already got the excavation equipment. He's already spending the money, right, because it takes so much lithium. They get so little from every ton of lithium. It's like an ounce per ton, or maybe an ounce per 100 tons. It's a ridiculous ratio, right? And all I'm saying is, instead of doing that so much and pushing the EVs so much, why don't you just look at putting out a gold-backed alternative to a federated coin? Because all of the Bitcoin, all of this, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take it off of the topic we're at, but it's all air. All this thing.
Well, I think I can bring it back, because I think that you're right. I think it is all air, and part of the air, and I'm writing about it. Part of the air is the idea that money has to be backed by anything except the will of the government. The reason that Abraham Lincoln was able to complete the Transcontinental Railroad and fight the Civil War at the same time, the reason, frankly, that Adolf Hitler was able to pull the Third Reich pull Germany out of the depression that they were in, is because they issued their own currency. And one of the points that Michael Jones makes in his book Barren Metal is that that we've been fooled into this idea that we have to have a currency that's backed by something other than the will of the people who put their full faith and credit in that currency. And to that end, I don't know that it needs to be backed by lithium, or it needs to be backed by gold, or it needs to be backed by Bitcoin is backed by scarcity. Yeah, somebody else is saying Benjamin Franklin. Alexander Hamilton did the same, was arguing the same thing. I don't know that we need to have what's her name? Ellen Brown, in her book, Webb of Debt, says that you could pay off the $23 trillion in debt today by minting a $23 trillion coin and handing it to J.P. Morgan and saying, here's your $23 trillion. Thanks for sharing. The idea that we are actually in this debt is magic, right? It is a faith-based belief that's been sold to us by experts, that is basically backed up by nothing. You could back a currency by lithium. You can back a currency by gold. It doesn't really matter to me. I think that the full faith and credit of the United States of America is probably good. Although I think that the full faith and credit of the full faith and credit of the United States of America is kind of bankrupt at this point. Zero Hedge there was a story on Zero Hedge today that I retweeted where they were talking about American tax dollars paying for weapons in Ukraine. There's no tax dollars there. There's debt. What happened is the Treasury printed a bunch of money that went to Colt or Browning or whoever, Raytheon, whoever makes weapons, and they gave that money. They gave that money to those weapons manufacturers, and all those weapons then wound up getting shipped to Ukraine. There's no tax dollars there. There's just debt. They print the money that doesn't really go into the economy. It doesn't become currency. It doesn't actually go into the economy except to go directly to the arms dealers. And then it becomes debt that everybody in the United States of America owes back to the people who lent it to us. You know,
yeah, and I agree. And I'm just saying, at some point, the government is going to say, all this Bitcoin is too. There's nothing backing it. There's no regulation. We need to come in and regulate it. FedCoin is their proposal, and now with FedCoin, you can add restrictions. You can say if you can't spend it out of your 15-minute city, if you do, it's 50% tax. If you drive out of your 15-minute city, 50% tax, carbon taxing, whatever. You know, you drive your car at all, tax, or turn it off. In case of insurrection, you can turn the money completely off. And so the proposal I had was go back to the original, U.S. grant, and the reason we built the Transcontinental Railroad to begin with was to go get the gold out of the mountain at Sutter's Mill. That was the reason we built the Transcontinental Railroad, because when the shit does hit the fan, people will accept gold at the end of the day. That will always be a currency that people will accept.
They'll accept food too. I always said that after gold, the next precious metals are brass and lead. Because people eggs.
If you have food or have gasoline on the outside of your car, it's not only money, it's also a good way to get killed, right? Because somebody who has lead or brass may say, hey, you give me your food and give me your car, give me your gas, or you're going to be dead.
Right.
Gold is something that you can hide and is a currency. So
it's a store of wealth. I'm not sure that it's
yeah, but it's one that's been accepted all through history versus all the other ones. I would rather have gold, than any other thing, Bitcoin or anything else. Will Bitcoin really go from 64,000 to 128,000? This one gold mine doubled here in a couple of days, and everybody told me, don't brag about it doubling. Stuff up here goes up 10x, 50x, 100x, 1000x. 2x is something we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to do something speculative in gold, again, if you're in Bitcoin because you think it's a great way to make money, 2x is kind of the high end. I can't see it going to 128,000. I can see it going to 1,000 a lot easier.
I bought my first Bitcoin at $600, George, and my friend Max bought it when it was like $1 or less, a nickel, whatever it was. But to that end, bringing this back to Learning Man and citizen journalism, it's like I don't really think in those terms anymore. I think I've been building a library for a couple of years now. Between physical books, I buy as many physical books as I have room for. Richard Grove said something on his Grand Theft World podcast on Sunday that kind of knocked me back a little bit, which is that the reason Kindle is called Kindle is because it's got this Fahrenheit 451 reference where it's Kindle is about burning books. And the reason that becomes dangerous is because if the N-word is used in Huck Finn and Amazon decides that that's not a good idea, then the N-word disappears from Huck Finn. And if you are trying to find 1984 as a paper book on the Apple Books program, good luck. I don't think they have it. I'm not sure about that, but I tried finding it and I couldn't. Anyway, I digress.
Well, let me tell you on the books thing. Marilyn Monroe had a 430 book library that included a lot of your famous authors from your village, Pacific Palisades, Thomas Mann. You mentioned all the authors.
She was married to a writer, wasn't she? Miller, right?
Well, yeah, at one point, yeah, Miller.
Arthur Miller, right?
Yeah, but her psychiatrist Greenson hung around with all those Adorno and all those Bertolt Brecht and all those folks that came up to Hollywood, the Freudian communists. That was her handler. That was the person that was drugging her up until the day she died. And of course, I've been talking about these golden threads that go through CIA history as a way of unwinding CIA history, and she's one of them. They were trying to get her to be a communist spy. All these papers came out that she was, in Mexico meeting these communist people, and her psychiatrist was communist, and then they were being lured the first relationship with Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe may go back all the way to 1950. He may have been the father of her child, Nancy Green. Going back, John F. Kennedy lands in Hollywood the same time.
Wait. So whose child?
John F. Kennedy's child with Marilyn Monroe, Nancy Green, could be the child that she
They had a child? This is news to me.
Yeah, the Cusack papers, if you look at the Cusack papers, Marilyn Monroe took 7 months off, if you remember, when between the time she was at, well, it could be Johnny Rosselli's child as well. But she went from Fox, which Daryl Zanuck, over to Cohen at Columbia. And then she left Columbia and had a 7-month gap. And I can't remember the next studio she went to. But if you look at the Cusack papers, Nancy Green says
Well, when I look up the Cusack papers, I get this Wikipedia John F. Kennedy document hoax.
Well, I wouldn't say.
I'm just saying that's the search engine optimized result that comes back number one there. But
Well, she did take 7 months off. The fact that Bobby Kennedy was with her at 10:30 at night on August 5th, 1962 is not disputed. There's
Sure.
5 or 6 different people. The fact that they met and knew each other all through the 50s, and is not. He first came to Hollywood when he won his house seat in Massachusetts. And remember, his dad ran RKO Studios, so he was cavorting around as soon as he won his seat in Massachusetts. And his favorite golf partner, Johnny Rosselli, right, also hung around with Marilyn Monroe, and she stayed at Johnny Rosselli's house often. Again, a Chicago mob figure. So here we go.
yeah, I mean, I found United States versus Cusack. So this guy Lawrence X Cusack. So he
Kennedy's lawyer. Kennedy's lawyer. Yeah.
So Kennedy's lawyer claimed what?
Nancy Green, the kid that Marilyn gave up in 1950 when she was 21,
Right.
claimed that it was John F. Kennedy's child. This isn't hoax or anything like that. This is, they had met and they had a relationship. Now, she had a lot of relationships, so it could have been somebody else. But it is an interesting thing that they're running Marilyn Monroe at John F. Kennedy while he's still a congressman. He's not even a senator yet in 1952.
Right.
That's really interesting.
It is. And yeah, what makes it interesting also is like you start to wonder, like, what I was talking about earlier about Johnny Vedmore attacking Ryan Dawson. It's like we know that Joseph Kennedy was the ambassador to the Court of St. James, right, at the beginning of World War II, and I think Churchill wanted him out of there. I'm pretty sure. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, well, they wanted to get the U.S. into the war.
Right. And so when I start thinking about John F. Kennedy getting compromised, the first people that I think about who would want to compromise him would be the British, would be MI6.
Well,
that's where I would go.
Well, there was a gal by the name of Inga Arvad who sat in Hitler's box during the 1936 Berlin Olympics.
Uh-huh.
And she she met with Edward the Eighth, the King of England, in the Bahamas after he had abdicated. She had front companies down there, and she's cavorting all around Washington with John F. Kennedy, Ensign Kennedy at that time in the Navy. And then he's down in South Carolina. She's coming down to Charleston Naval Base to see him. So they finally sent him to the Philippines over with my dad and Guadalcanal and Bougainville and New Georgia, right, to get him out of Washington. So he was already being targeted because Joe Kennedy was the ambassador to England in World War II. But then he immediately starts being targeted after World War II by these Hollywood starlets when he goes out to L.A. after he wins his congressional seat. So it's very interesting because she does kind of go away for 7 months, which is very unusual for a top model, as you know.
Or an actress.
And she was still a bit actress at that point. She wasn't really getting the parts she wanted.
Right.
I think she went over to another studio after that. Columbia tried to get her some parts, and then I think she hit it big when she got to John Huston in 1950 and Asphalt Jungle when she got to MGM. But I think there's a 7-month period where she was staying at Roselli's hideaway,
Right.
in Los Angeles. So, and Marilyn Monroe says she had a baby and gave it up for adoption. So, there's a lot of evidence here that hasn't been gone over. But my point is, they're already going after Kennedy as a congressman.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know his father, head of an RKO studio. First, they got to take out the studio, right? And then they got to take out.
Well, and RKO made Citizen Kane too.
RKO made Citizen Kane, and they're going after Orson Welles as well. They set up Orson Welles supposedly to rape the Black Dahlia, which I don't think she did. George Hodel, John Huston, and Mayhew are the ones that set Orson Welles up. And that's your book. The world's going to see that pretty quick with Orson Welles and Citizen Kane.
Well, that I'm not going to. I had 2 projects I wanted to do when I started this 2 years ago. I've got to finish the first one first. So
yeah.
But this book, Importance of Language, somebody recommended it who follows the channel. Thank you. I always like the book recommendations, especially if they're only this big, and it's essays. So it's essays by Aldous Huxley, Samuel Butler, C.S. Lewis, Owen Barfield, Bronislaw Maslowski, and a few other people. But they're short. They're short essays, and I got it specifically for the Aldous Huxley one. And there's a lot of references to words being magic. There's a lot of references to people using words in order to reframe people's realities, which is my main interest in this book. So the main thesis of my books is that there is a power structure of the world. It doesn't have anything to do with what they tell you on television, and that the 2 technologies that they use, which are I think are older than the Bible, which is why people like Michael Jones, who, although I think his scholarship is impeccable, it only goes back as far as the written word, or as far back as he's got physical evidence, and so he always comes back with the same answer, which is it's this group of people. But I think that if you use the kind of Lyndon LaRouche rubric of there's written history, and before that there's anthropology, and before that there's paleontology. If you look at anthropological evidence, that you can trace the metadata roots of these things back basically before the flood. And the 2 technologies that the cults that are in control of the world are word magic, that is using words in order to frame people's realities, in order to change their belief systems, and then bringing it back to Bitcoin and lithium money. The idea that people have this faith-based relationship with currency that winds up becoming, in a way, I mean, I think that you could argue that faith in currency in 2024 is more powerful than any other religion, because I look at the faith in currency as a religion. And the problem with that is that, as Jones points out in his book Bare Metal, is that economics started out as a department in moral philosophy. That is, how do you use money in order to control a society with some kind of a moral principle involved? And that's why I look at the capitalism communism argument as kind of like it's a fake dichotomy, right? Marx needed to make up capitalism in order to justify communism, as if those are the only 2 choices, and the libertarians and Murray Rothbard will jump in and they'll say something else, and the what do you call it, Austrian economics people. But at the end of the day, what Jones points out that I agree with is that if you have a monetary system, and I'm going to bring this back to supporting citizen journalism, if you have a monetary system that supports the truth, that is fact-based, evidence-based reality, okay, and I think that truth is a spectrum. I think that things that are observably true or things that are empirically, people argue about the word empirical, but things that you can actually prove are the case and actually happened, as opposed to, Aristotle. And again, Linda LaRouche paints Aristotle as a bad guy in a kind of Leo Straussian kind of way, like Plato's a good guy and Aristotle's a bad guy. I'm still struggling to kind of get my arms around that one. But the point is that I lost my point. I lost my point. But if you start talking, George, I'll remember what my point was.
Well, man, you're right, Peter. Manson did put all of his ranches at the bottom of canyons. That's the natural placer point for what? Gold. Who are the people he killed on all the ranches, right? Gold miners, right? What did the 16 women and 5 men represent, right? Adverse possession, right? The Gold Mining Act of 1872, you own it if you adversely possess it for 7 years. You put the girls out there for 7 years on Spawn Ranch. Remember, he goes and puts them there in 62. He comes back. Remember, he does some girl starlet recruiting. Robert Allen Hale, he recruits some starlets to try to go get John F. Kennedy. Comes back 7 years later. Manson's still there, right? This is what he's doing. He's going to all these different gold mines. He's on 5 different ranches that all have gold. I can't believe I'm the first guy to come up with this. It's like the Crockett gold mine over here, the Bragg gold mine over here, the Briggs gold mine over here. He's all over the mother lode. He's got all the canyon.
Old mines. You can put a lot of things in old mines too.
Well, they used to put the stills in the old mines during Prohibition time.
Well, you can hide bodies. Like you could, it's a good place. It's a good garbage dump. Once you got a big hole in the ground, it's already dug. You can just throw things in there and kick out a couple of supports, and boom, they come down, and it's all good. D.E. Sassoni says Aristotle had pros and cons similar to Descartes and Newton. Yeah, I mean, for members of the Duke Report, I sent out my follow-up to Linda LaRouche wrote something called Secrets Known Only to the Elites. And then there was a follow-up to that. And I found it very useful for my book, and so I turned it into an EPUB, and I sent that out to people who are members of the Duke Report. But LaRouche's LaRouche's narrative that he tells is that that Plato was that the Republic and Timaeus specifically. The reason that I sent it out to the members of the Duke Report is that in a February 1980 issue of The Campaigner by Lyndon LaRouche. Lyndon LaRouche got his own ancient Greek translators to translate the Timaeus, which is a dialogue, a Platonic dialogue, that LaRouche claims was mistranslated by all of the Oxford scholars that had translated it up until that point because it had secret knowledge. It actually equated a lot of things that come along in Christianity with Greek philosophy, and that it was that mistranslation of Timaeus that wound up becoming kind of this linchpin, and again, this is my interpretation of it, and I may not have it correctly. And if anybody who's listening has a different take on it, I'm open to hearing it. I was chatting with Matthew Arrett about it a couple of days ago, but the idea was that that these translations, these mistranslations of classic texts. So the mistranslation of John 1:1 in the Bible of "in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God." If you link that back to Plato's translation according to Linda LaRouche of Timaeus, then it starts to link this idea that our consciousness is inextricably connected with our logos, which is our ability to think, to rationalize, to communicate, as you and I are doing right now. And it is the logos that is allowing the words to come out of my mouth and the pictures to go into my camera and out of everybody's screens, and then have some kind of knowledge, supposedly knowledge imparted to them. But what LaRouche was saying is that Plato arranged the coup of who was Alexander's father? Philip of Macedon. That Philip of Macedon was overthrown by a Platonic faction, and that Aristotle was a student of Plato's, and that Aristotle was aligned with the people that Plato was up against. And so Alexander wound up dying, being poisoned to death by Aristotelians, by people, agents of Aristotle. And that there's this, for over 2,000 years, there's been ongoing battle between these Aristotelians and these Platonic forces. It sounds good. I'm still researching it. I'm not completely sold, but I think that he lays out a really good case. And I think that reading the LaRouche version of the Timaeus is really valuable.
Well, Marilyn Monroe was very religious when she was little. And,
so yeah, I'm under how many books did she have? Plato in her 400. How many books did she have? Did you say
430? Something.
Okay, not 420.
I think it was 431 actually.
432 would be a good number too. Yeah, 432. Yeah,
would be a good number. I'm just saying it's all in and around Peter Duke. I mean, everywhere you turn in this story, it's Peter Duke, Peter Duke, Peter Duke. I mean, you go down. Well,
see now I'm confused again. I don't know what that means.
Well, it means that the key rendezvous point on the beach for the Kennedys with Marilyn Monroe was at Beach Road in Malibu, 632 Beach Road, which was the home of Louis B. Mayer, right? 625, excuse me. Home of Louis B. Mayer. And then who buys the home from Louis B. Mayer? Peter Lawford, the brother-in-law of the Kennedys. That's where all the Kennedys, the night of the murder or the night of the death of Marilyn Monroe, we know that house was already bugged with 4 different bugs. I got the name of the guy who bugged it. We know Marilyn Monroe's house in Brentwood was bugged. Probably not too far from OJ's house, right? And not too far from the gal OJ killed, and not too far from Andy Breitbart's house. And oh, by the way, Jack Warner lived there. Joel Freeman, who went on to run Warner Brothers, his son-in-law, and he was also up at Lookout Mountain Air Force Base, his son-in-law, Robert Allen Hale. The guy who was at Lookout Mountain doing all the films, Motion Picture Unit 1, then went on to run Warner Brothers and Seven Arts. Joel Friedman, his son-in-law is Robert Allen Hale. How did Robert Allen Hale get his bit parts? Because his father-in-law was running a studio. Jack Warner lived between 600 and 625 Beach Road, right? This is where all of it happens, and it's all where Peter Duke has been standing out there with George Webb looking out over the cliffs. It's all happening right there.
Here, well, the cliffs are, okay, so this is 635. Oh, this says 614. So I don't know if that's the right address, George, because there's no...
Beach Road, Palisades Beach Road, 625 Palisades Beach Road, I think is the address. Are you in Pacific Palisades or Malibu?
I'm in Pacific Palisades, but on the Pacific Coast Highway, directly in front of the Palisades, it's Santa Monica. So and the houses that are on the beach side are even numbers, and you can see that on the opposite side of the street there are no houses. So it would have to be an even number address.
I'm absolutely positive.
Oh no, you're right. No, hang on. It says 625 right there, and thank goodness Google didn't block it out, because usually it blurs the addresses out. Okay, so there it is.
Can you look at it from above?
yeah, I can. Yeah, if I pull it up in on Google Earth, I can. Hang on a second.
They've added a lot of the things, but back in the day, you could see Jack Kennedy in the pool with Bobby Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe and a whole bunch of other girls Peter Lawford used to set him up with in the 50s. And here's, when Peter Duke moves his hand across the skyline, your hand sweeps over this when we've done all of our films up there on the hill.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's do this.
There were other studio heads there as well. Sam Goldwyn lived on that same beach. In between 600 and 625. It was where all the big Hollywood parties were. That's where the Academy Awards were conceptualized at 625 Beach Road there. Because Louis B. Mayer said, why don't I have a PR stunt and give awards to my actors?
All right, well, 625 Beach Road is right here. This
the
is
helicopter that spirited Bobby Kennedy away
yeah.
on this beach, and the people with these pools that night complained that this Bobby Kennedy's helicopter for the getaway helicopters sprayed sand into their pools.
It's very interesting because this is very close to the place where I met Andrew Breitbart, which is right here at the beach club. This is actually this is the Annenberg Beach Club. There's a private beach club, which is, where is it? It's right here. This is where I met Andrew Breitbart, right here. And
that's Malibu, right?
Right, and this is the canyon that we were looking at last week. This is, I have my Meta Palisades link. So this is where all of the, Tom Hanks and Thomas Mann and Murphy Ranch, Steven Spielberg are up there, Salka Veritel, and there's Palisades Beach. So yeah, so all of this stuff takes place, right here. It all takes place right here.
And the reason why we pull on these golden threads through CIA history is the key here is Marilyn Monroe is being offered as some kind, they're trying to sheep dip her as a Russian spy. And the reason Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy break the relationship off is because she starts talking about nuclear arms control. And they're giving her these note cards to start talking. And Bobby leaves this place after being with Marilyn Monroe, sort of taking her off the hands of John F. Kennedy. And then he goes and watches a nuclear test at the nuclear test site in Nevada right after seeing her. So they're cutting this thing off. And then, of course, she dies that night.
Interesting. She was deleted.
She was deleted. Yeah, she's deleted. Yeah.
And then the stories about her were distorted.
Yes, the stories were about it distorted. And yes, the helicopter did land on the beach. So, I'm sorry. Either the people who were living in the pools dreamt up the fact that the sand jumped up into their pools overnight. I think you would hear a helicopter outside on the beach spiriting Bobby Kennedy away. And I think everybody on the beach heard the helicopter. So this is part of Hollywood history. And it's really important because it shows how these guys who had father-in-laws that ran the studios were going to pick the starlets that they wanted to run at the Kennedy.
Right. I'm just looking up at Ocean. This is Ocean. So this is Palisades Park right here, this little green spot. Yep. So when you hear Jan and Dean or the Beach Boys singing down at Palisades Park, that's the Palisades Park. So that's Palisades Beach Road. This is Palisades Park. And up here on one of these buildings, I think Paul Verhoeven, who did Basic Instinct and I want to say Starship Troopers. I think he lived up there, and I think Chris Penn, Sean Penn's brother, famously OD'd on cough syrup. My guess is that people don't really OD on cough syrup. That there was probably something he wasn't cooperating with. Is my guess, but
Or a shot over the bow for Sean Penn.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's another way to go. Hey, you're the better looking brother. Although I thought, in Let's Hear It for the Boys, with the Kenny Loggins, I thought Sean Penn did all right in that movie. I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was With the Kenny Loggins movie with Kevin Bacon. Of course, Kevin Bacon's been in a million movies, but that was Sean Penn's big movie.
He was also in Taps, wasn't he? In Taps with there were a lot of people in Taps. I think Tom Cruise was in Taps, and that was like a big.
Was in Taps, obviously, and then what's his name? The dark-haired actor, Tim
Hutton.
Tim Hutton was in
right.
In so it's Footloose. Yes, Footloose was the Kenny Loggins song, and then he was also with your friend Quentin Tarantino doing the Robert Allen Hale movies, right? Reservoir Dogs. He was the guy who shot the cop in Reservoir Dogs.
I found my script for I was cleaning out the garage this weekend. I found my script from Reservoir Dogs that Lawrence Bender and Quentin handed me when I was supposed to shoot pictures of the cast for Luomo Vogue, and Harvey Keitel wouldn't put on the jacket. I've told that story before.
Harvey Keitel wouldn't put on the jacket. Well, I don't think it's the end of the world if sand gets in your pool. I'm just saying that that's proof that the helicopter landed on the beach. That's physical evidence. When you got 50 people that say, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?"
I can tell you, I have friends who have rented houses on this street before who watched the show, and I can tell you that sand gets in all these pools.
Yeah, but
sand in these pools is an issue. Yeah,
I'm just saying, Peter, if someone landed, let's say down your street, a helicopter at 10:30. Landed a helicopter, not flew one over, because you get a lot of flyovers, but landed one, especially right here, you're going to notice it, right? And Gates, who was the mayor, the police chief at the time, said that Bobby Kennedy was in town that day. Everyone placed him, there at the location. They've got many, many witnesses now. And this is probably the biggest story, the biggest Hollywood story that's been covered up, right? The fact that they were trying to entrap them as communists. Right. This is the Robert Allen Hale angle, the intelligence angle, the classified documents angle is the one that has been completely ignored. Geraldo Rivera has done this story. Bill Bixby did this story. Hugh Downs did this story. Barbara Walters did this story. Everybody leaves out the CIA. The critical linchpin.
JBTG3 says Sean Penn snorted depleted uranium.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit more than.
I think that might have been Chris Penn. Chris Penn was snorting depleted uranium. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm trying to figure out how to put a bow on this.
Well, it's Peter. It is Hollywood is how people believe, right? These movies are putting out false narratives of what the belief system is, right? We're gonna say
it is. They do call it movie magic.
She was a depressed person. She overdosed on pills. It turns out nobody can eat 47 pills without having some of them residual in the stomach, some of them residual in the duodenum. Nothing was in her stomach. Nothing in the duodenum. How could that possibly be? It must have been an injection. Who was injecting her up until that day? Her psychologist. Every day they were getting uppers and downers, uppers and downers, uppers and downers. Greenson was giving her injections every day. What I'm saying is here.
Who was a very big leader in the world who also had a lifestyle like that?
Timothy Leary.
I was going to say Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler had a doctor who was giving him uppers and downers every day for the last couple of years of his life. That's
Kurt Blome, the Hitler's doctor. We now have a Blome who is chasing down one of our journalists.
Well, Blome was Luftwaffe. His doctor had another name.
Okay. There's a Blome who's runs the head of German health department, who is trying to get one of our researchers in Germany arrested. We said, do you know Kurt Blome? Is there any relationship to Kurt Blome here? The head guy who ran kind of the wonder weapons for Albert Speer in BioE.
Dave Underdown, Theodore Morell.
I think there's a Blome there too. We did a whole bunch of stories on Kurt Blome. But this is my point is it's Operation Hollywood. It's putting the Capitol Dome on top of the Hollywood sign after World War II. And it isn't Hollywood anymore. It's DC overseeing what Hollywood puts out. And if the story, they don't like the script, they'll destroy you. They stole the RKO studios from Joe Kennedy. They'll destroy your kids. They'll use all the Hollywood starlets to destroy your kids. And the third one, if Teddy Kennedy wasn't such a piece of crap, they would have probably tried to compromise him. And maybe Mary Jo Kopechne was an attempt to get him. I'm just saying, is you mess with CIA and Hollywood, that's the real studio on the hill, which is the point of my series, which is Echoes of Laurel Canyon. I've got 5 episodes out there on my Substack.
It's on your Substack. Okay, well, we should pimp those then. Zaga Nostra says Mithras was a greater influence on Romans. I guess I wasn't part of that conversation, but it reminded me of something. I was watching a video by a guy named Giordani. Is that his last name? He was. I'm going to put some of his books on the Duke Report. Very interesting. But the Mithras angle answered a question for me, which is why Columbia, on the pediment of the what's his name, the auditorium at the Environmental Protection Agency building is called the Mellon the Mellon Auditorium, on the pediment, which was started, I think, under Herbert Hoover but completed under FDR, has Columbia, the patron goddess of the United States of America, as a hermaphrodite. But it could also just be a man dressed up as a woman, if you look at it that way. The same figure is also in front of the National Archives. This guy Giordani was talking about how that's like the Statue of Liberty, that is a Mithric initiation rite, to take a guy. And it's funny because at the beginning of that movie that you and I were talking about a couple of shows ago, The Good Shepherd, Matthew Damon's character, he's playing the James Angleton character, is dressed as a woman. In the first opening shot of that, his opening shot as a college student, he's dressed as a woman. This is a Mithric initiation, right? And so you've got Columbia, the patron goddess of the United States, on the pediment of that building. Looks like a dude dressed as a woman. In front of the National Archives, a dude dressed as a woman. Statue of Liberty could be argued that it's a dude dressed as a woman. You've got Michelle Obama, which Stu Peters argues that it's a dude dressed as a woman. That this is a Mithraic thread. And I guess what I was starting to talk about earlier, that I lost my thread when I went off into a birdwalk, is the idea that if you go back far enough and you're just looking at the metadata, if you're looking at the idea that using words as magic, that is the trick that they use is to make us believe that Harry Potter, that magic takes place in places where there's wizards. It's Walt Disney's Fantasia, and that it's Harry Potter, and that magic is this thing that takes place outside the realm of what we're doing. If you understand that using words in order to frame people's reality is magic, then and you trace that back. You can trace it all the way back from the written words, but it kind of stops at Hebrew, and before that, Phoenician tablets, right? But we know that human beings existed before that, so we know that human beings were probably communicating with each other and writing things down. We just don't have the records anymore, right? And it probably goes back to before the flood. If you look at these two technologies, if you look at using words as magic, as a technology, if you look at using money as a way to control people's economies, when you get them to believe in the money, and in a lot of these ancient civilizations, the temples where people were worshiping their gods, they were the bank. So.
Steve Martin, remember when King Tut?
Yeah.
golden idols. Remember that part of the song? Golden idols, clean cut. I'm just saying, I'm not the first one to think of this. People say I'm out on a limb here. I'm not out on a limb.
Yeah, I mean, Cindy. Yeah, Cindy said, reminding us that Tom Hanks' career started that way too, right?
Right.
That's the second level mythic initiation, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I have to go look. I have to go look at the Giordani stuff. Thermostal told you books are magic. Yes, books are magic. They do change your frame of reality. You could pick up a book and think, and your reality is one thing. You could pick up a Webb book, and you're thinking that you've got 5 books. What are they?
I've got way more than 5 books.
No. But you just did 5 books and
5 chapters. I did 5 chapters in for Echoes of Laurel Canyon.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to pull that up. If I can figure out where my tab went.
And people are saying that the Cherokee have some kind of claim to the gold here. It's not the Cherokee Indian Nation. It's the Paiute Nation. And I've always said I'm 256 times more Cherokee than Elizabeth Warren. 256 times more Cherokee than Elizabeth Warren. Yeah.
All right, so
there's no claim here with the Cherokees on the gold, so don't think that angle. Yeah, stop that.
Okay, so I'm just going to hit archive because it'll put them in order. So Echoes of Laurel Canyon, Real Civil War, Echoes of Laurel Canyon, CIA, and Hollywood Echoes.
You can do the 5th one. Yeah, the last one there.
Okay.
She is. She's working at a place called Radio Plane. That's Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
In 1945, before she starts her modeling career. If you want to cycle through that.
Okay.
This is Operation Hollywood. This is putting the dome on the Hollywood sign. Okay.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, and there's Capitol Records too, right? Which
Atlantic Records too.
Yeah, Atlantic Records, Capitol Records. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. But I'm looking at her hair.
Yep. Yes.
It's very. I would now it's very processed. So there's that. So it's hard to tell what her natural hair color is here, but there's quite a bit of curl in it.
It was dark, and they were trying to make her into kind of being I can't remember, it was Jean Harlow. I think they were trying to make her look like had the curls, but she was imitating somebody at the time. And then this other guy said, I'm not going to, a photographer said, I'll pay for your blonde, change your hair blonde. I will not shoot your picture unless it's blonde. And that's why she changed to being blonde.
Interesting.
Fashion photographers rule the world, right? And if you blow through the pictures, you'll see that, all the receipts are there. I go through all the receipts. I talk about where she's born and so forth. But how early they take her father away is gotten out of the way quickly. They get the mother out of the way so that she becomes this waif going to all these different foster homes, 12 different ones, right? One of the people who's a boarder, who the first man to molest her, is the guy who played James Rothschild for Daryl Zanuck in The House of Rothschild, that movie. So that was a boarder in her movie. That's the first person that molests her, is this actor, this British actor. You want to keep rolling through the pictures. Oh.
Well, it's funny, George. I haven't figured this out yet, but I pay for your Substack, but I keep running into this, and I haven't figured
know what that problem is. If you come in through or sign in, maybe you need to sign in.
Yeah. Well, I'm signed in as the Duke Report.
Probably is tied to your Peter Duke email.
Yeah, it might be. Anyway, I don't have time to figure it out right now.
Yeah,
but
you can do it later. But there's about 50 of these references in each chapter, so there's 50 footnotes per chapter, and just all these unbelievable things that you can't believe. How could that possibly be? How could that possibly be? And then people check it out. They all say I made it up, and they all check it out, and they all go on to something else and say I made up something else.
Well, they say that you deleted or distorted or you generalized something.
The first guy to molest Marilyn Monroe played James Rothschild in The House of Rothschild. I'm not going to ever delete that. It's right. What they do is they move on to something else after they prove I'm proven correct, and that happens every day. That's a daily occurrence, So that's how they do. They just keep moving on to some new outlandish claim. 256 times Elizabeth Warren, at least, influences the Cherokee blood. At least.
Well, it's very interesting. So the reason that we're talking about I'm going to try to I do think I figured out how to put a bow on this. We started off talking about the meta model, and what I wanted everybody to understand who's watching the show today is that we all delete, distort, and generalize all the time. When you're putting a comment in the chat, you're deleting, distorting, and generalizing something in order to make it small enough to fit into the chat. If somebody says to you, how are you feeling today? And you say, I'm feeling fine. You've taken your entire experience of the day and you've collapsed it into I'm feeling fine. You've deleted and distorted and generalized a whole lot of stuff. So the deletion, distortion, generalization meta model is a way that we all manage the amount of language that we are using in order to communicate with each other. And it's got a good side and a bad side. The good side is that if we're smart about it, and if we don't have Asperger's and like go off on tangents and speak for 15 minutes about nonsense, then we can have a direct communication with someone. Yeah.
Look at your screen. Look at your screen. This is why I didn't go off on a nonsensical thing. I was responding directly to something that was on your screen.
I didn't put this up.
Right. So what I'm saying is that this is something I covered earlier in the show, which is I don't want any money. I'm not asking Elon for any money.
Sure.
I'm trying a proposal to make him $10 billion.
Yeah, but
let me just finish.
Yeah.
And have an endowment for citizen journalism. Now, Twitter is the #1 platform for freedom of speech. Now, all we're asking is that his money-losing enterprise that's losing $1 billion a year have a financial backing so that we will all have Twitter, right? But this person continues to say somehow, I'm trying to get $1 billion from Elon Musk. You see what I'm saying? It's complete distortion. I'm not trying to get $1 million from Elon Musk. I want $0 from Elon Musk. Zero.
Right. Well, this space baby person looks like a signature reduction person. You know, they're coming from the same place that, my neighbor upstairs is coming from. Just trying to be disruptive.
They must have a login to put this up as a you know what I mean? They must have a login.
Well, they're on X, and the problem that I have with X, the problem that I have with putting this comment up, I didn't put this up on the screen. Our moderator did, but I could take it down. Is that we don't have the same kind of content moderation on X that we have on all the other platforms. And that's my big gripe with X right now, is that I can stream on X, but I can't. People can say whatever they want. It's literally like a free speech platform. They can say whatever they want, and we can't moderate it. So
you see the logic here, though, Peter. Elon Musk has $193 billion, and he bought something with his Tesla stock that's losing $1 billion a year. Okay, which is Twitter. Okay.
Right. Well, that's if you believe the origin story. I don't believe the origin story.
Well, just go by reported facts from the shareholders just for a minute.
Okay.
But all I'm saying is, instead of pursuing Tesla so crazy, and pushing EVs beyond their future and trying to push into the future with something that's not quite ready, with the battery technology or whatever, why don't you just take the same equipment and go for the gold and use that to. That's money in the bank.
Because he's not driving. Just looking at the metadata, I would say it's because he's not driving.
My point is, if he's willing to buy this Twitter to lose $1 billion a year, he's certainly willing to entertain an offer to make it solvent.
I mean, to your point, George,
right?
Probably the biggest intellectual property opportunity in the world right now is the truth. It's just the truth. Like,
backing, it needs to go back.
Right. The biggest intellectual property opportunity in the world right now is to have a media outlet that actually just tells the truth. Now, I don't believe that Twitter is a free speech platform, because there's a guy that I follow named Sam Husseini who he grabbed two third rails this morning where he was tying COVID-19 vaccinations to Palestinian genocide in one tweet. I couldn't reply to his tweet. I hit reply and I was typing. It wouldn't let me reply. It was two third rails crossing each other. You know, they say in Ghostbusters, never cross the streams, right? Sam Husseini was crossing the streams this morning when he was tying COVID-19 vaccinations and Palestinian genocide in the same tweet.
Doesn't Elon retweet Wall Street Silver? Doesn't he retweet?
Yeah, let me see if I can find that tweet that I was talking.
Financial guy that he retweets, the news site that he retweets all the time.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that Twitter thing that I was talking
He's
about.
interested. If you're
Well, we know that he has a bot that's interested because what I found this morning. Let me see if I could find this. Is
I'm just saying, if you're interested in something that's $27 an ounce, why wouldn't you be interested in something that's worth 100 times that an ounce?
well, yeah, I don't know. Have you ever read the story about the guy who was working security at the first mega plant? What do they call them? They call them mega. Giga factory, and the guy figured out that there was like $160 million a year in scrap copper that was getting thrown in dumpsters and was being written off as trash, but it was being recycled. And the recyclers were
Making money.
Were writing checks to somebody. That is, they were taking stuff that was worth money. They were throwing it away as if it was trash. They were writing it off as if it was trash, but the people that they were delivering the trash to were writing checks for the trash that they were receiving.
Yeah. Yeah, and that used to be the same way for gas. Gas was off gases when you drilled for oil.
Sure.
And then somebody figured out a capture technology, and now it's bigger business than the oil. So when fracking came in, and all we were doing is saying, hey, let's use open source methodology for the gold, because that is a winner strategy, and let's use the gold fracking technology and continuous assay, which tremendously reduced the wastage and the tailings. So we're just trying to bring new technologies and say, hey, Elon, go for something 750 times more valuable. Wait a little bit on the EVs, right? And worry about securing the future of Twitter. He's so concerned right now about self-driving cars. You know, he wants to make a $100,000 car and all this. He wants to make this $100,000 truck, you know. Forget about these. And the Cybertruck is even more batteries, right? And
I see these Cybertrucks all over town now. They're so ugly.
they're ugly, and they're pushing the technology that require 2 to 3 times the amount of battery that the other Teslas had. And I'm just saying, for $3 an ounce, you're pushing it. Just go to the hybrids and use hybrids for a little longer, right? And not rely so much on the battery.
I like hybrids.
Hybrids are great. I think it's a great idea to have hybrids, but I'm just saying that it shouldn't be.
I'd buy a wood burning hybrid.
Fine. I think alcohol. You know,
A Stanley steamer hybrid would be great. Yeah.
Anything, or walk, or get a scooter. You know, what we need to worry about is saving Twitter financially before that goes away, because that goes away and that goes dark, we're screwed. I'm not saying Twitter's the be all and end all. I'm just saying it's the best game in town. It's the best game in town. I've been deplatformed on everything else. The only one I haven't been deplatformed on is Twitter. And I can tell truth here. I'm 256 times more Cherokee than Elizabeth Warren, and everybody knows it, right? Bang. You know, and she's trying to use Section 230 to be deplatformed.
Right. I was cleaning my garage out this weekend, and it's amazing how much money I spent because Glenn Beck scared the crap out of me. How much Campbell's soup I have, and camping equipment and all this other stuff, because the end is nigh. The funny thing is about the Roman Empire collapsing, the houses didn't go anywhere, right? The people didn't really, they didn't get up and move. At least they didn't get up and move that quickly.
And it happened over a couple hundred years. That's the other thing that people kind of leave out. I mean,
Right, exactly. So
Most of the people that came and attacked Rome, the barbarians and so forth, they came and stole all the gold, and then they left. They didn't stay there in Rome and learn, how to
Sure.
play Parcheesi. They took the gold and left. That should be a clue to you, Elon. That should be a clue.
sure. Well, I think Elon's just trying to figure out how to not be Freddie Laker.
Well, he has a lot of money from a lot of different things. He's got the SpaceX, and he's got the Boring Company, and he's got other things.
Which is why I think that Elon is just a front man for the Pentagon.
DARPA kid, yeah. Well, he's
Yeah.
a DARPA kid. There's no question he's a DARPA kid.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we're doing the lithium, and maybe they really are doing the gold mining at the same time, like you said, with the copper going into the waste basket. Wink, wink, wink.
Right.
Oh, you got to take that gold away. We don't want that gold. It's weighing down our dumpster.
Well, the guy who was working for Tesla, who reported it, he got fired.
Yeah, because people are going to start trying to steal the trash once they figure out that's how they're.
There was $160 million worth of trash going out every year out of this factory.
See, that could be a stealth project, because you could be saying, oh, it's good for greenhouse gases, right? So that's why we need to be tearing these mountains down for lithium at $3 an ounce. But in actual fact, you've got the separation in the dumpster downstream.
Right.
They're doing the gold separation, the silver and the palladium and the platinum downstream.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what is. Maybe that's the big secret here that we don't know.
Indeed, yeah. I'll just tell this story and then we can go. When I worked at the May Company, the head of security came to me one day and he said, we were moving. We had moved from downtown Los Angeles to North Hollywood. And the head of security came to me and he said, I've got a question for you. And I said, what's that? And he explained to me that when they were moving from downtown Los Angeles to North Hollywood, the head of security was the only person left in the building in downtown Los Angeles. He was cleaning out his files. He was in his office. Everybody had moved to North Hollywood. Like, the building was still there. Okay, but it was basically empty. And a messenger showed up with a box full of silver ingots. And he wanted to deliver them to the vice president of production. And the head of security said, well, I'm the head of security. I can sign for that. So he signed for it, and it was a cardboard box that was just kind of folded. It wasn't even sealed up, and he opened it up, and it was filled with silver ingots. And so the head of security, and it was from a photography company. And so the head of security came to me, and he said, can you come into my office? And I said, sure. And I come into his office, and he shows me this box of silver ingots, and he explains to me how he got the box of silver ingots. And he said, where in the photography process do silver ingots come from? And I said, silver recovery. And he said, what's that? And I said, well, when you shoot pictures, this is back in the old days when we had film, when you shoot pictures, you use film, and film is used with silver nitrate, and you put the film into developer, and then you put the film into stop bath, and then you put the film into fixer. What the fixer does is it removes all of the silver nitrate from the film that isn't used in order to make a picture. So there's a bunch of, the film is coated with silver, and then all of the parts that are clear on the negative are where all the silver has been taken off. So the fixer eventually becomes exhausted. And what exhausted means, it becomes a supersaturated solution that's filled with silver nitrate. So it's liquid silver. And so what you can do with the liquid silver is that you can send it off to a place that's called a silver recovery company. They take all of the exhausted fixer, which is also called sodium hyposulfate, and they put it through a process and it turns it back into silver. And if you hire companies to do your silver recovery, they'll either write you a check for whatever the silver is worth, or they will give you back, they split it with you 50-50. Basically, you give them the sodium hyposulfate, they take the silver out, they take half, they give you the other half. And they'll either pay you in cash or they'll pay you in silver. It's your choice. So the vice president of production at the May Company had made a deal with a silver recovery company. He told them that they needed to charge the May Company for removing hazardous waste. So the May Company was paying the Silver Recovery Company to remove hazardous waste, and then they were passing under the table to the Vice President of Production silver ingots. That was his payment every month. And so after I explained that to the head of security, it wasn't until about 6 or 8 months later that the FBI came in, because it turned out that he was not the only person who was pulling shenanigans in the board of directors of the May Company. But the FBI came in one day and walked a bunch of people out of the building.
Well, I mean, this whole thing where it costs $132,000 a car, with government subsidy, it could very well be there's a side hustle for gold here, or a side hustle for silver, or a side hustle for palladium or platinum, right? Or other, or tantalum, which is used in the iPhone or whatever. There could be a side hustle going on here. And maybe that's, I've spent the month up here. I'm done. It's like, okay, I put the proposal out there for Elon. I'm at the end of the month. I'm done. If you don't want to do it, fine. I think maybe that's why I didn't get a response from Elon, is because maybe there is a side hustle of gold going on, or silver, like you just described. You're certainly moving a lot of mountain, and I went to the actual location of a gigafactory, and I saw all these huge monstrous trucks, and they were moving mountains. And then they just put in another gold mine, so maybe maybe we hit a nerve here with Elon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with that, George, I'm going to say adios. And if people want to support George Webb, they can go to georgewebb.substack.com, and they can become subscribers, and they can get the first 5 chapters of what is going to be George's next book. And if they want to support this channel, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/The Duke Report, and you can do that there. Or you can go to thedukereport.com/shop, and you can buy a t-shirt. Or the best way that you can support the channel right now, if you haven't already, is buy my book, Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy. And with that, George, I will see you again next week.
See you then, Peter. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.